Okay, just make sure that you can get in and everything's there. I can't hear you because you're on mute. To every
I can get in, just make me a co-host so that I see that already that I could share screen and whatever. I'm gonna look the correct link because it's just annoying. Okay,
hey, you're
fine. Yeah, now I see that I'm the co-host. And you're sending to the people though? Well, I can't hear you. Yeah. Glad to know that we're not the only ones with technical difficulties. Yeah. Oh my gosh. This is gonna be so fun. Wait, I can't see or hear you guys.
How are you? The connection's like not so good.
The
I don't know if that's
connection
fine.
is not
There
so
you
good. I have like very good connection. So I'll give it a second. Abby. Thanks, same year. No,
I don't know why I'm upside down.
I don't know why you're upside down either.
I think I fixed it.
Yeah, I don't know why you're upside down. Oh my God, this is gonna be way too much fun for me. As Dina messaged me, she's like, I'm used to you being the one behind the flyer. What's going on? And I'm like, I know. Hard to say. Hard to say no to Naomi Grummett. Just give a few more minutes for people to sign on because the thing was wrong. Wait, okay, Ayelet, where are you living these days?
I'm living in the Heights.
Very good. The good old Heights. The good old Heights. Who iPhone did Jess? Who are you? Oh, hi. Shelda. Oh my God.
Hi.
Fun. So many people that I haven't seen in so long. So exciting. Where are you now, Shelda?
Actually, I'm in Israel right now. I'm doing an exam semester in Technion,
Cool. Studying what?
mechanical engineering.
Cool. Wow. Amazing. Okay.
Yeah.
You guys are so cool. Yeah, I recognize the train. Okay, and Abby is in Israel. How are the babies?
They're good. They're sleeping for now.
For now. Okay. Tikva, where are we finding you?
I'm home, but I just finished my first year in Stern.
Woohoo. And Nina, where are you living these days?
In Haifa. I'm a student at the Technion.
Do you guys know each other, Shalva and Nina? Shalva's doing a semester now in the Technion.
Really?
Yeah. I'm in the international section, so maybe that's why we didn't meet.
Probably. I'm in the industrial engineering. I was in the international program, but we were in the same year in Lindenbaum, so I do know you from back then.
Okay.
Yeah.
The years are all a blur. They're all one big blur.
It's also the change of lessons and everything adds something else.
I wish that I could use that as an excuse. I remember everyone very well and like lots of things about everyone, but the names are just doesn't work for me. Okay. I feel a little validated because the Eden Center was the one who set up this technology and it didn't work. So it's not only New Drescher and Baum and the difficulties setting up technology. So yeah, there are like a bunch of people, there are a few people, no, I don't want to do that, who just like kind of waiting for Naomi to, she was going to email everyone, but I think we'll just kind of, start because for those of us who are on time and who are here, So that we'll do that. Okay. Okay, so first of all, it's just really nice to see everybody in different stages and phases and like places in life. And kind of like what I want to do tonight is spend a little bit of time, definitely like we'll learn some Torah together, and also like I really kind of just want to open like a conversation about a topic that I think the truth is I think maybe it's talked about more and more, but is something that definitely has like not so much talk around it all the time. And I think even when there's talk about it, like, okay, you just got married or you're getting married or you're seriously dating or you're like these types of things, and then you take your college classes, etc. I think that you could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 12 years out, and like there is still there's less talk about it. And it's definitely, I think, for many of us, I guess, an area of thought that are complicated. So what I really wanted to start with was actually just like hearing from you guys, like what, I guess, first of all, like what comes to your mind when you think about mikvah, and also like, is there a challenge that you either are currently facing or worry about facing, like when you think about the halachot of nida, taharat mishpacha, etc. So anyone willing to be a brave soul and start?
I don't mind starting. I only just got married in November, so I'm still starting off. But I think that's something I was in Stern while I got married, and I think it was definitely it's supposed to be like something that's private, and I often felt that a lot of my friends did not approach mikvah topics in an appropriate manner, and that was something that I struggled with. Like, I'm happy to talk to you individually, and I'm sure there are things that are difficult, but I always felt that the conversation was never something that was done in an appropriate manner. Probably because like a lot of us got married at a younger age, but it was often in a group and like people were saying things together, and it just didn't feel like it was these conversations, like at least in my experience. Now for a lot of people it's not talked about at all. In my experience, I have people who talk about it too much. That's my personal experience.
You're saying like it was like overly, like the whole inyan of like it feeling like something that was private and something that was like between like you and your spouse or you and whatever was actually like overly
yeah, both that, and in addition I have a lot of single friends, and there's just a massive gap of things that they don't experience at all that we experience as married women.
Interesting.
So I'll say I have a different thing that was hard for me. First of all, I got married like a little over a year ago. So now been to mikvah plenty of times, but I find that I have trouble connecting to the experience. Like I had heard a lot about it before, and how it's such a special time for a woman when she goes to the mikvah, and then like I just get there and I kind of just want to get in and out as quickly as possible, get back home. And especially with this Israeli lady looking at me and pulling hairs off my back. So yeah, that's definitely something I experienced.
You said, for some reason I cut out the first thing. Hey Rose, how are you? The first, you're saying in that first minute that you said specifically mikvah itself, you said you have a hard time relating to. Okay.
Yeah.
To be fair. Yeah.
I think for me, so I've been married like almost 4 years now, which is like been a while, and I also just had
one of the first
like I just had twins
I ever taught.
Yeah, even if Cheryl wasn't an official college teacher, I still think you wouldn't be who I had learned with from that. But in general, for me, like I mean, like obviously Cheryl's amazing. So like I definitely got that like connection, I think, and like connected with the things that I wanted to. But I'm also like a big proponent of like knowledge is power. So like also I guess because I got married like a while ago. So like any new friend who I had met here in Israel who was getting married, like because I knew like the mikvahs around the area and I knew whatever, like I would always just say to her, like, if you ever have like questions about like mikvahs in the neighborhood, like let me know. Like I'm happy to talk to you or like guide you through, just because in Israel the mikvahs really range in terms of like cleanliness. Like I don't know how else to say that, which is like a huge part in it. And so for me, because knowledge is power, I'm like, as long as you know what you're getting yourself into, like it's not so bad. Which is like, but Nina, I'm also with you in terms of like getting in, getting out, especially because I went like through COVID married. So like you weren't prepping there anymore. You weren't taking the time to like be for yourself. You weren't like having the ability to do all of the things that I did in my first year of marriage that then I couldn't do in the next 2+ years. So now it's like, well, for sure I'm prepping at home and for sure I'm just going in, going out. Like it's super not a big deal. So it's really interesting for me how things have like evolved in turn, like in these last 4 years.
Totally relate to that. Yeah. Shava, you have anything to share?
Yes, that was already said, but same, like it's been 3 years that I've been married, and like still, like, to really connect and to really put a lot of meaning in the experience, I still struggle with that.
Yeah, totally. Rose, where everyone was just sharing like a thought or challenge or something that's like on their minds when it comes to thinking about mikvah or taharat mishpacha. Either
Right, and I missed the hearing the question
Yeah.
at the beginning, but
Or
I
are
was thinking
experiencing.
that kind of like I used to sometimes would think, well, this is one thing that if it weren't a mitzvah, I wouldn't bother doing it. You know, some things you do because they give you added feeling and meaning, but this was one that I felt like we only do it because you have to.
Right. Yeah, no, I think there's like definitely validity to it. And it's funny because actually, Shani,
Okay.
hi. If you're willing to, we don't see you. That could be intentional. That's okay. We are kind of sharing something that they feel is either on their minds or a challenge when it comes to mikvah, taharat mishpacha, etc. So you have anything that you want to have any challenges on your mind or thoughts?
I'm going to take 1 second and join with video in just a minute, and then I'll share. Okay.
Okay, so it's actually interesting because Rose, and this is actually like I think an interesting place to start, and for me, if I'm being intellectually honest about it, a place that I feel like I for myself have to start, and like if I'm approaching the topic with people, I also have to start. Share my screen with you for a second, which is actually with the Mishnah Torah, the Rambam in the Mishnah Torah, in the last of his halachot that he brings about hilchot mikvaot, he actually says, to a certain extent, I think kind of like that attitude that Rose just told us, davar baror v'galoi shetumot v'taharot gzerot hakatuv hen ve'inan medabrim shedaot shel adam michra'ato v'harei hen michlal hachukim. So he says that like tuma and tara are things that are they're exhibit, they're things that we're basically told we have to do, and they're included in the list of chukim, right? Chukim are the things that we were always taught growing up. They're the things that like we have to do but don't necessarily have reasons to it. The tefillah shel hatumot miklal hachukim, and the idea of going into the mikvah is part of these chukim. She'ena tuma tit o tzo'ah sheta'avor b'mayim ela gzerat hakatuvi והדבר תלוי בכוונת הלב, ולפיכך אמרו חכמים טבל ולא הוחזק כאילו לא טבל. So he says that it's not that like the Tuma and Tara has this like magical, it's not like that the water has this magical power, right? That like suddenly, all of a sudden we like, you go into the water and then you are basically free of Tuma. It has to do with your kavanot halev. And therefore, that's why we're said that like if you, the Chamim teach that if you, we don't practice this, the halacha, don't worry for those of you who said like, I just want to get in and out, like many of us do, many months, but I just want to get in and out, like meaning if you go and you don't have the kavanot, so then therefore it's as if you didn't tovel, okay? What I find fascinating about this halacha and like the fact that the Rambam chooses to end his whole Seder Tahara with it is that on the one hand, he's telling us, okay, this is a hook. This is something that we have to do. And like, we really don't understand it. And so there are a lot of people who will come and try and argue and say, it's the most beautiful Nida and Tara Mishpacha and all these things. It's the most beautiful halacha. I love everything about it. If you don't like, if you don't have it, then like, you're not going to have a beautiful marriage. And mind you, like most of the world who doesn't have, there are a lot of good marriages in the world, right? That don't have, that aren't Jewish, that don't have, that don't keep Taharat Mishpacha, and there are a lot of arguments that are made. For me, I feel that like, and maybe this speaks to you and maybe it doesn't, but for me, I feel that like, I appreciate the fact that it's a chok. I appreciate the fact that like at the end of the day, we keep it because it's halacha, right? And at the same time, right? Like he comes and he tells us, okay, so but what's the ikar here, and what's going to make it or break it? It's kavanat halev, right? It's how we choose to approach it. It's how we choose to be mindful of it. And I feel like that kind of combines a bunch of what you guys were saying, right? On the one hand, like what Rose was saying in terms of like, I don't know, it's that one set of halachot that I'm just not sure I would do if I didn't have to do it, if it wasn't halacha. And on the other hand, right, like what Shalva and Nina and Abby were saying in terms of like, okay, I just like, I don't feel that connection, right? It's just something I just sometimes have to like go in and not go in. And I think it's like this in-between thing. And the truth is that I actually think that one of the reasons that people, especially like if you're with friends that are not married or like super newly married, I think that like, there's like this air of mystery around it, right? And so people just like want to know. They're just like, well, like, what is it? People sometimes are like, is there magical powers to this? Is there like, is it the thing that's like makes your relationship magic? Is it the thing that's, and I think that like, that's where people are sometimes like, it comes off as inappropriate, right? And it is inappropriate. But I think that for some people, it probably comes from a place of like, oh gosh, like, what is this? And it doesn't make sense. And I think that the Rambam almost holds that contradiction for us of like, it's a chok, we have to do it. And since we have to do it and it's halacha, this is my interpretation of the Rambam, really, because this is like how I want us to approach it. Like, since we're going to do it, like, let's talk a little bit about the kavanot halev. Let's like think a little bit about like how we can go and like, sometimes it's going to be something that like may feel like I just have to get in and out. And sometimes it's going to be something that like, okay, I'm up and down, right? And I can put my heart and my soul and my kavanot into it. Shani, you can share now. I was just like giving a little.
No, I love it. I'm just thinking because it's been so long for me. I've been nursing, so I'm so out of it. I was just thinking about how the Kavanat Halev you were talking about when you go. I was just at a share and they were talking about, I don't know why this came to mind, but a woman who's, God forbid, like accused, like an Isha Sota. And if a woman even like says in today's world, like, I slept with another man, a married woman, like you don't believe her. And the woman was explaining, like, it didn't happen. Like, there's no evidence and it didn't happen. And she was contrasting it with the mikvah, how like, when you go to the mikvah and you come home and you say, I've been to the mikvah, we believe you. Like, there's no certificate. There's no real, like, so that to me felt like the kavanat halev, like it is about your intention. Like, you went, you came home, you've been to the mikvah. Like, it doesn't matter what actually transpired.
she's halachic, right? Like meaning the whole idea of one of the ways, even halachically, that you can enter nida status is what's called ne'emanut ha'isha, right? It's like the woman is believed no matter what, right? And like that's why we have to, like, even for ourselves, be careful what we're thinking, but also to have the confidence. Like it's this funny thing, because some people are just like, well, like the rabbi is the one who's determining and this and that and others, and of course we should consult, and of course we should ask questions, and there's, thank God, like we live in a world that has a lot of resources, but also like Namanun Ha'isha is like one of the most powerful things in the world, right? No one asks you questions. Nobody says to you, this is not, and that's something that we should like be able to say, okay, like I can do this. And that's why I do think specifically when it comes to this area of halacha, the what is it called? Like the kavanot really are important. And I think that is, so like what I want to spend like a little while, just even like for a few minutes doing tonight, is kind of exploring some of those ideas. It's interesting because I guess like I would ask you, like, when you think of mikvah now, what's one word that comes to mind? You can either throw it out or put it in the chat, or like either for yourself or like the buzzwords that you feel like are the things that you think, hear, etc. Preparation. Mm-hmm. I think preparation is a big one. I think preparation can have a lot of meanings, by the way. The other thing that I think is interesting, and even like in this group, you can kind of hear it, is that it's something that evolves, but that it's our job and not men. Well, that's for sure. It's part of it's okay to sometimes feel like I don't like you very much because you're not female theory. But yes, it's different topic. Is that it's something that evolves with us in our lives, right? Because you can go years without, like Shani said, like without interacting with it, and it could be something that is like brand new. And when you first get married, it's one thing, and when you are trying to get pregnant, it's another thing, and when you are pregnant, it's a different thing, and after you give birth, or God forbid, after you have a miscarriage, it's something else, and then it's like when you're perimenopause, it's something different, and then when you're menopause, like it's something that just like kind of evolves with us, and therefore it is something that is constantly like dorish. It's constantly like dorish, like rethinking and rethinking about. And I think it's one of those things, like those of you who know me well, like have definitely heard me say this before, but I think it's another one of those things that like we kind of can use as anchors for ourselves, in terms of like the mikvah is like this thing that's been here forever, right? It doesn't change. It's the same. And it's every time we approach the mikvah, whether it's every month, every year, after 5 years, we're the ones who are like looking at it in a different way, in a different light, through a different mirror, right? I think of the mikvah sometimes as this like combination of like this pool of tears of like all of the women who came before us, and like all of their tefillot and everything just like pooling together there. And I also sometimes think that water is oftentimes like a mirror, and it's something that reflects back to us kind of like who we are and what we are seeing in it. And so I think that's part of what we're doing. Okay, so we have preparation. Other things? What do you want mikvah to be? Those of you who said that you feel like it's not a meaningful experience, what would you want it to look like? Immersion? Spiritual? Spiritual is the word, or what you would want it to feel like? The
Want
word
it to feel like.
Okay. Yeah. connection, spirituality. Okay, so I want to share with you actually a really beautiful idea that I'm going to give credit to Dr. Judith Fogel for, because she's the first person that I heard this from. And it kind of changed, we'll learn a little Torah together. It changed just kind of changed my overview of mikvah. So there are several places in where is Vayikra found? Where is the mitzvah of Vayikra found? I mean, of Nida and of mikvah, entire, like, what's the source? What are the sources?
Is it about coming to give a carbon? No.
Right. So the first one, like Shani says, comes in Vayikra, Perek Tet Vav, and it is in the context of all of the different people, all the different types of Tilma and Tara, Visha ki tiya zava, dam yihi azova b'bisara, shivat yamim tiya benidata, v'chol hanogea ba yitma ad ha'arev, v'chol asher tishkav aleh benidata tim'a, v'chol asher teshev alav tim'a. Yitama, right? So it's in this context, we're told a woman who has her period, basically she is a nida for 7 days, everyone who touches her becomes tameh, etc. and so forth. And I think for the purposes, there's a lot to say about Tuma and Tara and about like, but I think for now we're going to leave that kind of to the side. Next place that it comes out. So the next place that it's going to come up for us is in a few prakim later, again in Vayikra, right? Daber el b'nei Yisrael v'amarta aleihem ani Hashem Elokechem k'ma'aseh eretz Mitzrayim asher yashavtem ba lo ta'asu k'ma'aseh eretz Canaan asher ani mevi etchem shama lo ta'asu u'bechukotechem lo telechu et mitzvotai ta'asu ve'et chukotai tishmoru lelechet bahem ani Hashem Elokechem da 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 da. Ish, okay, ish el asher sa'ar b'sheva lo tikravu legalot erva ani Hashem ervat avicha ve'ervat imecha lo tigale da 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 ve'elisha b'nidat tumata lo tikrav legalot et ervata. Perek Yud, right? We start talking about the what parsha are we in here? What examples are here? We're in the parsha of the arayot, right? Of all the forbidden relationships that are forbidden and relationships that are permitted. And if you skip again to Vayikra Perek Chaf, again, we're back in we talk again about again, we're back in Arayot territory, forbidden relationships. By the way, this is actually the first time, also not going to talk about this. This could be like a 10-part series, but this is the first time in Perek Chaf that it actually talks about like punishment and that it being something that like there's bad or severe punishment for. The first 2 times we hear it, it's kind of very matter of fact, right? And like, okay, this is Tuma Tara. And in between in Perek Yatet, we have the famous parsha of Kadoshim Tihiyu Ki Kadosh Ani Hashem Elokecha. I'm Kadosh, you're Kadosh. And so therefore you have to be Kadosh. Okay. So what's really cool here, which Dr. Fogel pointed out, is that we actually do not, I mean, you guys can tell me, but we do we do Tuma and Tara today? Yeah, everyone's shaking their heads. No, right? Like we don't really follow the laws of Tuma and Tara today at all. Meaning it used to be, and if you travel around Eretz Yisrael, so every other place you go, there's a mikvah, because like Tuma and Tara was everywhere. And if you read the rest of the first half of Sefer Vayikra, including all of Perek Tet Vav, it's all about the ways you become tameh, right? And then how you become tahor, and it could be from tamei mate, and it could be from touching of food that's tamei, and it could be, there's a million different ways you become tamei, and then you have to go through a process to become tahor. And one of the ways that you become tamei, including like also shechvat zera, and also like every time you had sex, you used to have to go to the mikveh, right? The guy used to have to go to the mikveh if he wanted to go to the mikdash, because zera is also tamei, right? And it's all these ideas of tumah. And like the honest truth is that we don't practice any of that today, because we don't have the Beit HaMikdash and we don't fully understand it. And so obviously the question bears of like, well, so why is this, like, why do we practice Nida today when we don't actually practice the rest of them? And what she pointed out was that it's interesting because of all of the things that we kind of pay attention to, right, is of all the things that we do, the only one that comes up again is in the second half of Sefer Vayikra is Nida. And in the second half of Vayikra is all about two things, right? We saw them, Kadoshim Tihiyu, I'm Kadosh, I Hashem am Kadosh, and therefore you have to be Kadosh. And I Hashem and Chukat HaGoyim, like you don't want to be like everyone else. You want to be different. You want to be special, and therefore, like, don't follow their chukim and mishpatim. Follow our chukim and mishpatim. And Nida is found in that context also. And I think that that's one of the reasons that, like, today we hold by it, meaning because it is something that is part of it's not only part of our tumatara status, but it is, which I think for many of us, at least for myself, tumatara is a hard thing to relate to. But it is part of our kedusha status, and the whole second half of Sefer Vayikra is all about kedusha, kedushat hamakom. It's all about the halachot of Eretz Yisrael. Kedushat Hazman, all about the Chagim, and Kedushat Ha'adam. These are the types of relationships that you can have, and these are the types of relationships that you can't have. And so I think the first window into what we're doing here, and we're not gonna really talk a lot, like I actually think we'll hone in, because this is what you guys talked about specifically on making mikvah itself meaningful. Like I want you to walk away with like a few ideas about that. But if we want to think about like the whole rubric, I really think that this whole rubric of halachot, again, accepting that it's a hard set of halachot, but is an opportunity for us to bring kedusha into our lives. To say, when we say under the chuppah, ayidei chuppah v'kiddushin, like meaning we are literally saying we are choosing to take this thing, this most basic act, and make it kadosh. And I really like the way that I really like Rav Hirsch. Does someone want to read this Rav Hirsch?
I can read.
Go for it.
The laws regulating sexual life and the partaking of food guide man already from his earliest stage of development. These divine laws stand guard at the bridge which joins the material with the spiritual, man's organic physical being with his divine freedom. The eternal mystery of combining such opposites and their continued integrity is guarded by these precepts. Fulfilling these laws with thoughts and feelings of purity, freedom, and holiness ennobles those daily activities which often threaten to degenerate into vulgarity, indecency, and spiritual moral death.
Right? So he's saying here that, like, and what I really like about this Rav Hirsch is that he accepts the challenge, he accepts the contradiction. Like he says, like, these are opposites, right? And like we like kind of choose here to fulfill these laws, which could feel restrictive, complicated, etc. And we are choosing to like fulfill these laws with purity and freedom and holiness. And that, in a sense, then therefore enables us to take the most like basic things, which are like, we've all watched the movies, like, which could be something that's so not special. Like when you read, right, when you go up and you read, like, okay, when you read like like which of these halachot, like we can all relate to that. Like we've all seen the movies and like meaning what relationships are and can be like in if they're not like looked at in a proper way. And this is an opportunity, right, for us to do this. Okay, Rav Aaron Lifton, I actually didn't know that he like had a whole essay about this whole topic until I was kind of preparing for this, and I could share the essay with you because I thought it was fascinating. And I'll just pick out like this last paragraph because I think he also says it very well. Consequently, impelled by our spiritual instincts and animated by the faith instilled in us by our Torah mentors, we opt for consecration rather than abstinence. Right? This is actually like a fundamental thing that makes us different than Christians who believe that like their ministers just don't have like sex at all. They don't believe in relationships. In this mode, they think that the ideal is they believe that the ideal is to refrain. We believe the ideal is to elevate and make it kadosh. In this most sensitive area, we strive for a life which is energized rather than neutralized, not merely sterilized and sanitized, but ennobled and ennobling. We're challenged to sanctify by integrating sexuality within total sacral existence, characterized by the systole and diastole of divinely ordained denial and realization, and by infusing the relationship itself with human and spiritual content. This is by no means the easier course. And I think that that is also such an important line. May we have the wisdom and commitment to render it the better. So, like, I think what he's saying to us here is that we, like, well, first of all, we're choosing a harder course, right? I mean, I think being a halachic Jew in general is that, and being a halachic Jew in the modern world, alachat kam v'kama, right? We are choosing to do, I think, one of the harder things. But we don't believe in like refraining and neutralizing and sterilizing, but we believe in elevating. And that I think is like the first idea when we're going into the mikveh, is that we're not like clearing, we're not like trying to sterilize, right? We're trying to elevate. Meaning we can't erase who we are, and we can't erase what we have done, and we can't even those moments that we feel like, oh my God, I'm not here, like I just need to go in and I just need to go out. Even that moment, like I think there is space to say to yourself, okay, like, you know what? If all I can ask for myself right now is to want, or to feel like I'm gonna like just the consciousness of it, I think is like a huge part of what we're trying to accomplish here. And like if your mantra going in is like, right, like a nobilization as opposed to sterilization, then I think that that's already like puts us ahead of the game. And kind of like sheds off one of the first, I think, misconceptions in terms of like when we like going into the mikveh and feeling like, okay, like let's think about how we can, let's think about what's there. Like you guys know, I really like words. So this is a new one that I heard recently, that tefillah, right? Litvol comes from the same shorish as hitlabtut, like trying to think about, to understand, to debate in our heads. And that's like, I think, part of what we are trying to do, right? We are like in that moment, stopping, pausing. I really think that like mikvah can and should be like a mindfulness practice more than anything else. And I think that the physical, like when you said preparation, I think that we all too often get lost in the physical preparations. I think the physical preparations are like super important. And also sometimes like not stands in the way, but I actually think that they can be a vehicle towards spiritual and emotional preparation. Something someone told me before I got married, which has like definitely stayed with me, was that as you're preparing your body, think about your tefillah, not dunking, but like prayer, your tefillah for each part of that body, for each part of your body that you're preparing. Or if that's too much for you, pick one part, pick two parts. But like if today you are like, say you are davening, like you're trying to get pregnant. So maybe you're davening that like your hands are going to Bezrat Hashem be holding a baby. Say you're like feeling like you're working on seeing like the good in other people, or you're like in like a hard moment with your spouse and you just want to like see them like, or your kid, and you want to just like see them more positively. Like when you're cleaning that gook out of your eyes, like you're thinking to yourself like, all right, like I want to see more, that's what I'm davening for. Like I want to see more positively, or like I'm trying to get my body in shape and like get into whatever, and I just want to be able to like run a mile faster than I can or ever. So like, what are my feet davening for, right? Like, what do I want in this? What do I want in this moment? And I think that the mikvah allows us like that opportunity. We have to take it. It's like everything else, right? Like meaning we have to. It's not. There, I don't think that we believe in Judaism I think what we have to tap into, like, I was going to say we don't believe in magical powers. I think that there are things that we can tap into. I think that we have to tap into them in order to like make them happen, and we have to prepare for them more than anything else. Like we just we have to put the work into to think about it and to prepare it, which like I think is a lot of what like you guys are doing by just even like showing up tonight and even just thinking about it for a few minutes. But we have to be willing to do that work, and like we almost can't do it otherwise, right? We're told in the Kohen Gadol when he prepares to go into the mikvah, when he prepares to go in, he has to be clean of everything. And tshuva is equated to going to the mikvah. And it says in Masachet Yoma, like you can't coming to Yom Kippur without doing tshuva is like going into the mikvah, like holding a sheret, which is like an impure animal, an impure insect. And so it's the same idea. Like we have to mentally prepare also, or else like what are we going in for, right? We have to remove what the barriers are, and the barriers are different for all of us at all different moments, right? Chatzitza, lachsot, something that separates us and the water. And for a lot of us, that could be our mindset more than anything else. Honestly, it's a lot easier to like remove your nail polish and your earrings than it is to like think about, okay, like what is actually like separating or preventing me in this moment from like connecting to like the water, the source, the mine, like what, that's real avoda, like meaning that's a lot harder to do. And then in this, like, if we're talking about contradictions in this 1 second, we like have this moment, and the mikvah is referred to in Chazal, both as the kever and also as the rechem. It is referred to as this moment, it's referred to as like death, like you go into the mikvah and it's like suffocating, and like we can't breathe under there. And at the same time, it's referred to as the rechem. The water of the mikvah is like the amniotic fluid. And we like go in and kaviyachal, you like die and come up again and are born again. And like that's crazy, right? It's completely crazy. Okay, where are we holding? Let me hear where you guys are.
I was just thinking about what you were saying about preparing, and it is an avoda. It's interesting, like that's definitely true with anything in life. Like the more you put in, the more you get out. But I also think that, and I don't think this comes, but like just like the power of these things and these days and these places, even if you're feeling it and it is like a get me out day. I find like the mikvah is so hot. Like I've left my baby, like it's just like so hot, and I'm like I just want to be home. Like why am I here? I don't even like want to be doing this right now. And it's like just like I always like the one thing that I like my own meditation. That's just like even if I'm not doing anything else, just like this is a total immersion, and it's like a hug, like going like you're saying like back into that amniotic fluid, and like the water itself, like the physical water itself can do the work for you a little bit if you're not up for it sometimes.
Oftentimes about that idea quote, like at the end of Eifa, Shifli Kamaim Libech, that like at some point in our lives, like meaning we want to like pour out our hearts like water, but like sometimes we actually need the water to do the talking for us. And sometimes we need the water. And that's like, and if you're right, and if we can just tap into like that second of like those tears, like that picture, that, and whatever it is for you, right? It can be any of those things. And it's actually when the Sefer HaChinuch talks about coming back, and like why water purifies things that are impure, and he does a whole analysis of like why we have to like go into water that's like connected to like halachically, the halacha of mikvah is that you can't go into a pool, you can't go into something that's man-made, right? You have to go into something that is basically God-made, essentially, and that it's that like reconnection to the initial source, reconnection, like breakdown of all of the things that kind of like hold you back. Actually cool. I found this. I actually thought that this was like a very interesting source because it's actually written by somebody who's not Jewish. She's like a cultural sociologist in this purity and danger piece, but she studied like purity in different cultures and in different like religions. And you want to read it, Cheney? I think she just says it, and I think it's like sometimes cool to hear it.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah, go for it.
In water, everything is dissolved. Every form is broken up. Everything that has happened ceases to exist. Nothing that was before remains after immersion in water. Not an outline, not a sign, not an event. Immersion is the equivalent at the human level of death at the cosmic level of the cataclysm which periodically dissolves the world into the primeval ocean, breaking up all forms, doing away with the past. Water possesses this power of purifying, of regenerating, of giving a new birth. Water purifies and regenerates because it nullifies the past and restores, even if only for a moment, the integrity of the dawn of things. Wow, very cool.
I think it's cool to like hear somebody who's like actually not Jewish, and like study, like have give an idea about it. And it's also meaning it goes back to the creation of the world, meaning the first mikvahs in Sefer Bereshit. Mikveh Mayim Asayamim, like meaning Hashem basically one of the first things that he does is Keilu create this like Mikveh Mayim, and when we are going into the mikvah, we're kind of like back into that moment, back into that nikudah, back into that opportunity, that chance, and we and like that's essentially what we're trying to do. And it like it's interesting, it's like it's death and it's life and it's birth and it's renewal and it's tikkun. And what I was thinking about actually when you were reading this was that water also has this power that, like, it's funny, over Shavuot, I don't know, somebody prepared a source sheet for the kids in shul, and it was like all the different things that Torah is compared to. And so Torah is compared to fire, and it's compared to kemach, and it's compared to tree, or whatever. And it's obviously in Mayim Ele Torah, it's also compared to water. And one of the ways that it's compared to water is because it's like water is like the one substance that actually has the ability to like slowly chip away at a rock, right? And like so does Torah. Like we don't always see how it's going to have the, like, it takes time, you don't always see it, but then all of a sudden there's like can be like a crack in the middle of a rock or something shaved off in the middle of a rock. And I kind of feel like maybe that's like a way also that we can kind of like think about our mikveh experiences, especially like if it's feeling challenging, that like we're kind of just like chipping away. We may not be able to see it in that instant, but that water like has the power to be doing and to be changing and to be affecting like us and what we are and who we are. And even in the word mikveh, right, it's made up of, I always see two shorashim in it. I see kav, I see like lines, right, which I think have to do with I think that has a lot to do, going back to this idea of kedusha, has to do with boundaries. It has to do with like what's good for me? What do I want in my relationship? What do I want to leave outside my relationship? What are the things that I want to emphasize? What are the things that I want to bring into my home? What are the things that help us make kadosh? We have to like set those lines, set those things. And by the way, as you guys can all attest, right? If you got married a few months ago or 10 years ago, like, or 20 years ago, those lines move, right? And what we let in and out is actually super important. And by the way, I think that there's like a lot of value to thinking about that. I think this also is just like, again, we're not going to go into the whole thing about like what you can and can't do and during your time of nida, but like I think it's just another opportunity to stop and think about like, too often we think when we think about like harchakot, right? It's like all the things you can't do. But I think like we have to think about it in the perspective of like sormei rabba tov. Like it's not only the things we can't do, but like let's spend some time investing in the things that we can do, that we want to do, and hit the pause button. Like we live in a world that like is so fast paced that is like every second, like it's something else and it's another thing. And for us to stop for a second and think like, oh my God, like my marriage is not gonna just like, is not just gonna like magically like chug along. It's something that I need to work at and I need to invest in and I need to like figure out like meaning mikvah is beautiful and all these things are beautiful, but to be honest, it's like, to me, it's like a vehicle. It's an opportunity to help us push the pause button for a second, figure out like, what are these things that are like, what's going on? What do I want? And because the other word that comes out of mikvah is tikva, is hope. And so like with hope comes it could be the hope of new life. It could be the hope of a new perspective. It could be the hope of just like having energy to go through one day at a time. It could be it's so many different things. And I think that like it's like we need to stop in order to even give ourselves those moments of like feeling hopeful and feeling like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, like let's slow down. Let's like remember what's important. Let's like remember what is, and like, it's funny, like Ayala, I'm thinking back to what you said in the beginning about like friends and how like people sometimes talking about it in a way that's like inappropriate. And like, it's almost, I think they don't think that's part of something that like, you can't even appreciate until like having that time and having that like space, both as like a couple, but also even for yourself to pause for a second. And so like, it's really, I think it's really powerful. And there are like so many different ways to think about it and so many different ways to like analyze it. And there's so much written about it, like in a very beautiful way. Happy to like share stuff with you guys. And I think I'll share something with you that Rav Steinsaltz wrote, because I think that it ties into, I think mikvah is also, and again, like we could do a whole thing just on this, but it's also an opportunity for mindfulness and also for tefillot, right? The halachot of tefillah come from Chana, right? In Masechet Brachot, of which the acronym are Chala, Nida, and Hadlakat Haner. And those are like, we have opportunity and chiyuv, I think, every day to daven, but we are told that we have 3 opportunities that's like really daven. And this is one of them. And I think that seeing that as like an opportunity for tefillah and an opportunity to be able to daven is also like something that is extremely, extremely powerful. And again, I don't know how it is like in other parts of the world. Like I know in Israel, it's become mikubal once you've finished dunking to like the balanit will walk out and you can like have a few minutes to yourself in the mikveh. You're nodding your head. So like, I'm hoping that it's true there. Ayala probably may not know yet. I don't know. I've heard. How's the Heights mikveh these days?
I haven't been.
You haven't been. I've heard mixed reviews. So to take that time, right? And so he writes, and it actually has to do with prayer, but it also has to do with connection. So this is why I like it as one of the ways to end. He says, sometimes when we pray, we hope that a true connection, an awakening, and an awareness will be made at the beginning of the prayer and carry us like a wave until the end. Some things do work that way, but there are also many things that do not. Fluorescent light, for example, does not flow in a steady stream. It oscillates back and forth. Prayer also does not have a stable unidirectional flow. Prayer is characterized by movement that goes back and forth. There's trial and error in the attempt to gain ground. Little by little, the prayer begins to flow and gain momentum. It can be compared to an engine that has to be pumped again and again to get it going. The engine does not necessarily start on the first try. There are fits and starts. One must try and try again until the connection is made. And I think that if we can approach this topic with that in mind and with those feelings of okay, this is something that ebbs and flows, right? The waves, which when you talk about water, galim, the waves of the water, and legalot, to reveal what it's going to reveal in us and how we're going to connect to those points. I think that we can start to kind of at least feel like we're part of a process, and we are each time it's going to feel different. And I think we all need to find the thing for us in that moment that feels like it's going to work. And I think it's worth having a few things. I think it's worth having the preparation and the thinking, and maybe sometimes we're going to have that time that we could think to ourselves, okay, let's do it. Let's think to ourselves, all right, I'm going to prepare, and I'm going to think, and I'm going to think about all these things, and what do I want to daven for, and all these different things. And sometimes we're just going to be thinking to ourselves okay, water, do your thing, right? But at least I'm consciously saying, water, do your thing. And we should have the things that are simultaneously the things that we can prepare for, and also the things that we can kind of just go into. And I think that sometimes the clothing kilo tefillah that I would say take with you is, hold on, I'll share it in a second. Is when we read into Tehillim and we read Ani tefilati lecha Hashem et ratzon Elokim berov chasdecha aneni bemet ishecha. And Rav Nachman Breslov, in his only Rav Nachman being able to do way, he says that ki char bechinat tefillah hu hitgalot haratzon. The goal of tefillah, and I'll add here tevilah also, tevilah prayer and tevilah dunking, is sometimes legalot et haratzon, to find. Sometimes the first thing we need to do is to find the meaning, right? We need to find that thing, and sometimes that's what we're davening for. We're davening to find the meaning in that moment, and we're davening for that moment to be meaningful. And that's, I think, what the water kind of in that moment of death and rebirth and hitzchadshut is what we're doing. And just as one practical thing that I'll share, and this is the Eden Center, I think, has definitely in a lot of ways put this forward. And I think it's something that can I myself, I won't talk for anyone else, have used it in so many different, it's a very simple formula, and I've used it in very so many different things, both personally and also from kalot in and not only kalot, I guess once a kala, always a kala, but people in all different stages, is the idea of each tevilah, each time you dunk, being a different, giving it a different kavanah, giving it a different attributing something else. So in that moment when you go down, that's what you're thinking about. And you can do avar hu ve'atid, the first dunk that I'm taking, I'm thinking about what was happened but before, in the last month, and what I need to maybe accept in the last month. And the hoveh is what I'm thinking about in the present. What do I want where am I in this moment? And that seed is like, what do I want, right? What are my hopes and my dreams? And it could be something as simple as like, okay, like last month I like had a hard time like organizing my dinners for my family, and this month I want to have something like have a plan in place. And it can be something from like, I like didn't get pregnant last month and that was really disappointing to me, and now like I'm gonna like I need to like have my first dunk to kind of mourn that, and my Hoveh dunk to like accept where I am right now, and my Ati dunk for my tefillot for the future. And it can be like when I teach a lot, I actually teach a lot of Brovsky got me into teaching a lot of kalot who are gerim, like before they convert. And so their conversion and their first time at the mikveh for converting is also like for the wedding. And it's like fascinating. And when you start to talk to them about like past and accepting the past and where they are, it's, oh my God, it's like, it's mind blowing. And sometimes it's as simple as like, okay, you know what? My first tefillah, my first dunk is like my tefillot for myself. And my second tefillah is my tefillot for my husband. And my third tefillah is like my tefillot for like our relationship. And sometimes like when Am Yisrael is like in a crazy time, one is for me and one is for my family and one is for Am Yisrael. And sometimes I'm like a million different things, but even if we can't like prepare, we can't whatever in that moment, if like we can give each one like a little bit of like, I'm going in, I'm thinking even for that split second, and I'm coming up and like, that's my tefillah. So like, I think it's one way to kind of capitalize on that, like a Ratzon, and kind of capitalize on that fact that like we're taking the most basic thing and we're like water, like it's life, it's our life source. That's what we're tapping into. And we're saying, okay, like 1 minute, give me 1 minute. That's really all it is. You know, I'm always like shocked sometimes how fast it is. Like what can I do? What can it mean for me? What can it be for me? Like what are my lines? What are my like yeah, thoughts, like takeaways, something you want to suggestion to the group. Lots of silence.
I love that past, present, future. That's a great, I mean, that's a really helpful thing to, I'm going to implement that. Thank you.
Yeah, I feel like we addressed your stuff the least.
That's okay. This was all very helpful. I'm still new to things, so I'm not burnt out yet.
No, thank you. It was very, very, very interesting, and the past, present, future thing I think is it's very useful.
I think we're all works in progress. Right?
Thank you.
Thank you guys. It's so good to see you guys. Be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cheryl.
Thank you guys.
Bye.
Bye.